Open the account, automate contributions, invest in growth, and leave it alone. Eerily similar to what we talk about doing with our own accounts. Do that, and your kid will have millions of dollars by the time they retire. Not because you paid for everything, but because you gave them 20 extra years of compounding that they can never get back. Hello, friends. This is Tyler Gardner welcoming you to another episode of your Money Guide on the Side, where it is my job to simplify what seems complex, add nuance to what seems simple, and learn from and alongside some of the brightest minds in money, finance, and investing. So let's get started and get you one step closer to where you need to be. Welcome back to another episode of your Money Guide on the Side. Today we're revisiting one of the most popular episodes we've ever done, how to help your kid become a millionaire, or a multi-millionaire for very little. Last year's episode on this topic was one of the most listened to in 2025, and the number one question I got wasn't, is this real? Or are you exaggerating? It was, wait a minute, how big is that final number? And I get it. Because when you hear that contributing $3,000 a year for a decade can turn into $3.6 million by the time your kid is 65, it kind of sounds like financial clickbait. But I assure you, it's not. I don't play that game. It's basic math. It's compounding over 55 years. That's 55 years of growth you can't replicate if you wait until they're 20 to start. And when we tend to think about investing and compound interest, we also usually think about our own timeline. If you're 30, you've got 35 years until retirement. If you're 40, you've got 25. But if you start investing for your kid at birth, they've got 65 years. That's 20 to 30 extra years of compounding you will never, ever get back. And yet, parents endlessly stress about how to help their kids financially. Saving for weddings, down payments, grad school, the first house. And all of that is fine. But here's what none of us talk about as much as we should. $3,000 a year invested from birth to 18 will do more for your kid than gifting them $50,000 at age 30, and it's not even close. So today, we're going to walk through 3 different ways to invest for your kid. 3 different account types, 3 different strategies, and the real numbers behind each one. We'll talk about what happens if you fund it until they're 18, what happens if they keep contributing after that, and most importantly, the tax implications of each approach. We'll cover the UGMA, the account that requires no earned income. We'll cover the custodial Roth IRA, the account that requires your kid to have a job, but gives you 100% tax-free growth forever. And we'll cover a strategy that for some reason nobody talks about, just investing in your own taxable brokerage account and letting them inherit it with a step up in basis, completely tax-free, while you maintain control the entire time. And then finally, we'll wrap up and talk about why I'm not 100% sold on the 529, the account everyone recommends, but that might not actually be the best option for many families. And before we jump in, a familiar ask. If this show has been even remotely helpful to you over the past few weeks or months, if it's made you feel even 1 ounce more confident in your financial decisions, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps other people find the show, and frankly, it helps me feel like I'm contributing something useful to the world instead of just adding to the global oversupply of mediocre content. And to the 2,000 of you who left a review in the first year of this show, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you. All right, let's get started. Part 1, the 3 strategies we could use. Section 1A. Bear with me. The UGMA, UTMA. This is the no earned income required account. Let's start with the UGMA, which stands for Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. There's also the UTMA, Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, which is basically the same thing with slightly broader rules depending on your state. But for simplicity, I'm just going to call it a UGMA. And if you live in one of the states that uses UTMA, congratulations, you get to transfer your kid a slightly wider range of assets. I'm sure you're thrilled. Here's what a UGMA actually is. It's a custodial brokerage account set up for minors. You open it in your kid's name. You control it until they turn 18 or 21, depending on your state, and then it becomes theirs, fully theirs, meaning they can do whatever they want with it, including, and I say this with love, potentially making terrible decisions. But we're going to get to that later. Here's why it's useful. The UGMA is the most flexible account that I'm going to talk about today. Your kid doesn't need a job. They don't need earned income. They don't need to do anything except exist. You can open this account the day they're born and start contributing immediately. No contribution limits. You could put in $3,000 a year, $10,000 a year, $50,000 a year if you want, though at some point, gift tax rules will kick in, and we'll also get to that. And you can invest in anything. Stocks, bonds, ETFs, mutual funds, whatever you want. This is the account for parents who want to start early, who want flexibility, and whose kid doesn't have a W-2 from their little lemonade stand. Here are some real numbers to consider. Let's say you contribute $3,000 a year from the time your kid is 5 years old until they turn 18. That's 14 years of contributions. Total amount you've invested, $42,000. Now, let's assume you invest that money in a growth fund like Vanguard's Growth ETF, which has historically returned about 11% over the long term. Obviously, past performance does not guarantee future results, but for the sake of the example, we'll use 11%. By the time your kid turns 65, so 60 years after you started, that $42,000 is projected to grow to $7.3 million. Let me say that again for those of you in the back. You contribute $42,000, they end up with $7.3 million. That's the power of starting early and letting compounding do the work for 6 decades. Now, let's say your kid decides to keep contributing. After they take control of the account at 18, maybe they contribute another $3,000 a year from age 18 to 30, just 12 more years. That's an additional $36,000 they've contributed. By age 65, that extra $36,000 turns into another $2.4 million. So now we're looking at a total of $9.7 million by retirement. They contributed $36,000. You contributed $42,000, total contributions $78,000, total projected value nearly $10 million. And before you ask, yes, these numbers are real. No, I'm not exaggerating. This is math, boring, reliable, compound interest math. But let's consider some tax implications. Here's where the UGMA gets a little less fun, but definitely not terrible. Because the account is in your kid's name, investment income, meaning dividends, interest, capital gains, is technically taxed to your kid. But it's worth noting the IRS has something called the kiddie tax, which is about as cute as it sounds, which is to say, not at all. Here's how it works in 2026. The first $1,350 of investment income your kid earns each year is tax-free. The next $1,350 is taxed at your kid's tax rate, which is usually 10% because they're, a kid. But anything above $2,700 is taxed at your tax rate, the parent's rate, until your kid turns 19 or 24 if they're a full-time student. After that, all investment income is taxed at their rate, which, again, is almost certainly lower than yours. Now, if you're investing in a growth fund like VUG, this isn't a huge deal, and that's why I encourage thinking about these low-cost, tax-efficient funds. VUG pays very little in dividends, maybe 0.5% annually, So most of the growth is unrealized capital gains, which aren't taxed until you or your child sell. That's a good thing. Translation, your kid probably won't hit that $2,700 threshold every year unless the account is massive. And by the time they do hit it, they'll likely be old enough to be taxed at their own lower rate. So yes, there are taxes, but they're highly manageable. And compared to the growth potential, it's a very small price to pay. The biggest catch with a UGMA is that your kid gets full control of the account when they turn 18 or 21, depending on your state. And I want to be very clear about what that means. They can do whatever they want with the money. They can invest it wisely. They could use it for college. They could blow it on a Tesla, a trip to Ibiza, or a series of increasingly questionable life decisions. You have zero say in the matter. Well, you can say whatever you want, you just have no legal recourse. Now, maybe you raised a financially responsible kid who will make smart decisions. Great. But if there's even a small part of you that thinks, you know what? I'm not sure I trust my 18-year-old with $200,000, then maybe the UGMA might not be your first choice, which brings us to our next option, Section 1B, the custodial Roth IRA. This week's episode is brought to you by Facet. Here's something nobody tells you. The 3 years before you retire might matter more than the 30 years you spent saving for it. There are decisions sitting in that window that can either save you tens of thousands of dollars or cost you that much if you get them wrong. First, Medicare and something called UGMA. Your premiums aren't based on what you make when you retire. They're based on what you made 2 years prior. Big income year, sold a business, took a large bonus. Medicare finds out. We're talking your Part B premium jumping from around $200 a month to nearly $700. That's $6,000 extra per year because of a look-back window most people don't even know exists. Second, Roth conversions. Your early 60s are often the lowest tax period of your entire adult life, the perfect window to move IRA dollars into a Roth at a discount. But convert too aggressively and you spike your income, trigger UGMA, and get pushed into a higher bracket. Convert too little and you miss the window entirely, then get walloped by required minimum distributions at 73. Third, Social Security timing. Take it at 62 for a guaranteed income floor, or delay to 70 for 8% annual increases and a larger survivor benefit. Get this one wrong and you're living with the consequences for the rest of your life, literally. Most high earners leave serious money on the table, not because they're bad with money, but because they're reacting to life instead of planning ahead for it. So go to facet.com/Tyler today and begin to plan strategically. Facet's team of dedicated CFP professionals will build you an actual roadmap for one flat annual membership fee, not a percentage of your assets. That's facet.com/Tyler. Facet is an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is not advice. All opinions are my own and not a guarantee of a similar outcome. I'm not a member of Facet. I have an incentive to endorse Facet, as I have an ongoing fee-based contract for cash compensation, as well as a percentage of equity in Facet based on this endorsement. This episode is brought to you by Copilot Money. I have a group chat with 4 of my closest friends from my finance days. Between the 5 of us, we have decades of experience managing other people's money, multiple licenses, and, I say this with love, a genuinely embarrassing amount of opinions about expense ratios. These are not people who download budgeting apps. These are people who tend to mock budgeting apps. Yet, every single one of them uses Copilot Money, unprompted, voluntarily. One of them texted me last month just to say, and I quote, "I finally feel like my financial life is in one place," from a guy who used to manage 8-figure portfolios. Here's why people who actually know money keep landing on this one. It tracks your spending, net worth, investments, savings goals, and budgets in one place. And it's genuinely beautiful to look at, which shouldn't matter, but absolutely does when you're trying to build a habit. It automatically categorizes transactions, which means you'll stop pretending you'll sort your bank statements this weekend. It tracks your subscriptions, so you'll finally find that streaming service you forgot you had, and the gym membership you've been emotionally lying to yourself about since February. It works across iPhone, iPad, Mac, and their web app, and they don't sell your data. It's the only personal finance app to win an Apple Editor's Choice Award, was a finalist for the Apple Design Awards, and holds a 4.8-star rating from over 25,000 reviews, which means it's not just the finance nerds in my group chat. It's a lot of regular people who downloaded it and never deleted it. That is genuinely the hardest thing to accomplish in this category. Go to try.copilot.money/Tyler and use code Tyler2 to get 2 free months of Copilot Money. That's try.copilot.money/Tyler using code Tyler2. That's TYLER and the number 2. This is the tax-free forever account. This account is hands down my favorite account on this list. And I don't say that lightly, because I generally try to avoid having favorite financial products the way some people have favorite children. But if I had to pick one account type that combines tax efficiency, long-term growth potential, and the ability to teach your kid about money, it's the custodial Roth IRA. Here's what it is. It's a Roth IRA in your kid's name, controlled by you as the custodian until they turn 18. After that, it becomes theirs, just like a regular Roth IRA. Contributions are made with after-tax dollars, and all future growth and withdrawals in retirement are 100% tax-free. The catch? Your kid needs earned income. But here's why it's useful. The custodial Roth IRA has this massive advantage over every other account we're talking about today. Tax-free growth forever. I'll repeat it because it's worth repeating. Every dollar of growth, every dividend, every capital gain, every bit of compound interest over 50, 60, or 70 years comes out completely tax-free in retirement. And when we're talking about a time horizon of this magnitude, that's insanity. Let's say you contribute $27,000 over 9 years, and it grows to $3.6 million by the time your kid is 65. Well, $3.57 million in gains is yours, well, theirs, free and clear. The IRS never touches it. Compare that to a taxable account where you're paying taxes on dividends and capital gains along the way, or a traditional IRA where you'll pay ordinary income taxes on every dollar you withdraw. The Roth is the only account that says pay taxes once, upfront, and never again. And here's the other thing that too many people get confused by. You can withdraw your contributions anytime, penalty and tax-free. So let's say you contribute $7,000 a year for 10 years. That's $70,000 in contributions. If your kid needs money for an emergency, they can pull out that $70,000 without paying taxes or penalties. Now the gains stay locked until 59.5, but the contributions are always accessible. Now, do I recommend doing this? Of course not, because the whole point is to let that money compound for decades. But it is nice to know the option exists if life goes sideways. Let's look at the numbers here. Let's say your kid starts working for you at age 10. Maybe they help with your business, social media posts, filing, data entry, light administrative work, and you pay them $3,000 a year. Because they earn $3,000, they can contribute up to $3,000 to a Roth IRA. And you, being a generous and forward-thinking parent, decide to fund that contribution for them. You do this from 10 to 18. That's 9 years of contributions. Total amount you contribute, $27,000. Now, let's say you invest that money in VUG at 11% average annual growth, and you let it sit untouched until they're 65. By age 65, that $27,000 has grown into $3.6 million. And remember, that entire $3.6 million is 100% tax-free. No taxes on the growth, no taxes on the withdrawals, zero. And even better, let's say your kid gets a real job at 18, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter, and decides to keep contributing to their Roth IRA. In 2026, the contribution limit is $7,500 a year, or 100% of their earned income, whichever is lower. Let's say they contribute the max of $7,500 a year from just ages 18 to 30, just 12 more years. That's an additional $90,000 they've contributed. By age 65, that extra $90,000 turns into another $3.6 million. So now we're looking at a total of $7.2 million by retirement. All of it, every single dollar, tax-free. They contributed $90K. You contributed $27K. Total contributions $117,000. Total value $7.2 million. Total tax bill $0. If that doesn't get you excited about the Roth IRA, I don't know what will. And in case you didn't hear me the first few times, here are the tax implications. None. No taxes on contributions as they're after tax. No taxes on growth. No taxes on withdrawals in retirement. The only tax you're paying is the fact you don't get a deduction today. But here's the thing, your 10-year-old isn't in a high tax bracket to begin with. If they're earning $3,000 a year, they're probably paying 0 or 10% in federal taxes anyway, so the cost of not getting a deduction today is basically nothing, and in exchange for that, they get decades of tax-free compounding. It is the best deal in the tax code. The catch is that your kid needs earned income, and not just, hey, my dad gave me $20 to take out the trash income. Legitimate, documentable, defensible income. If you're paying your kid to work for your business, that's fine, but it needs to be real work, age appropriate, safe, reasonably compensated, and you need to keep records, timesheets, pay stubs, job descriptions, the whole thing. And know this now. The IRS will audit you if you're paying your 8-year-old $15,000 a year to consult. So keep it reasonable. $10 to $15 an hour for legitimate tasks like social media help, filing, admin work, cleaning, organizing. That's all defensible. And if your kid is older, 12, 14, 16, they can earn money through babysitting, lawn mowing, dog walking, lifeguarding, whatever. As long as they're getting paid and can document it, they can contribute to a Roth IRA. The other catch, same as the UGMA, once they turn 18, the account becomes theirs. They control it, and while they can't withdraw the gains without penalties until 59 and a half, they can withdraw their contributions anytime. So if you contributed $27,000 over 9 years, they could, in theory, pull that $27,000 out at age 18 and buy a very nicely used sports car. I don't recommend this, neither should you, but it's technically possible. That said, if you've been talking to them about money, if you've been showing them the account balance, if you've been explaining the power of compounding, there's a decent chance they'll leave it alone and let it keep growing. And honestly, if they do pull it out at 18, you've still taught them a valuable lesson about consequences and opportunity cost, just a very expensive one. And finally, Section 1C, your own taxable brokerage. The you keep control plus step-up basis strategy. All right, now let's talk about the strategy that nobody ever mentions, even though it might actually be the smartest option for a lot of parents. Just investing the money in your own name. I know, revolutionary. But hear me out, because this strategy has one massive advantage that the UGMA and custodial Roth don't. You keep control of the money until you die. And when you die, your kid inherits it with something called a step-up basis, which means they pay 0 capital gains taxes on all those decades of growth. So let me explain how this works, because it's genuinely one of the best tax loopholes in the US tax code, and so few people take advantage of this in practice. First, this isn't some special account. It's just your regular taxable brokerage account. You open it at Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, wherever you already have accounts, and you invest your money in your own name. Many of you probably already do this. And if you earmark some of those assets for your kid, you gain some advantages throughout your life. You control it. You decide when to sell it. You decide what to invest in. You decide whether to use the money yourself if you need it before you die. But when you die, if you have assets left over, your kid can inherit it. Here's where it gets interesting. When someone inherits a taxable brokerage account, not to be confused with a 401k or traditional IRA, which have their own rules that are beyond the scope of this episode. The cost basis, meaning the original purchase price of all of your stocks, gets stepped up to the market value on the date of your death. Let me give you an example. Let's say you buy $10,000 worth of VUG when your kid is born. Over 50 years, that $10,000 grows to $1 million. You die. Your kid inherits it. Normally, if you had sold that investment while you were alive, you'd owe capital gains taxes on $990,000 of gain. At a 20% long-term cap gains rate, that would be $198,000 in taxes. But because your kid inherits it, the cost basis resets to $1 million, as if they just paid $1 million for the same assets. So when they sell it, they owe zero taxes on that $990,000 gain. It's like the IRS just erased all the capital gains that accumulated during your entire lifetime. And yeah, this is completely legal. It's not a loophole in the we're exploiting a technicality sense. It's literally how the tax code is written. The biggest advantage with this strategy is control. This episode is brought to you by LMNT, which, and I say this as someone who has recommended index funds for over 15 years, might be the best value proposition I have ever encountered. Here's what I mean. My wife and I have spent the past 2 months in Sedona, Arizona. We recently had a group of friends visit us. Beautiful place, high desert, altitude that sneaks up on you in a way that's equal parts humbling and annoying. Now, I had a solid stash of LMNT samples with me in the kitchen, and the entire stash was gone in one day. Not because I hid them poorly, but because everyone wanted them. The morning crowd used them to start the day right. The I didn't realize Sedona was at 4,500 feet crowd used them to stop feeling like they'd made a terrible decision. And the people coming back from long hikes used them because they were craving something that actually made them feel human again. I watched people who had never heard of LMNT become LMNT people in real time in a matter of seconds. I have created salt monsters, and I regret nothing. This is what happens when a product is incredibly tasty and absurdly practical and helpful. LMNT is an electrolyte drink with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, and 0 sugar. So no crash, no liquid candy, no ingredient list that requires a chemistry degree. Just what your body actually needs, whether you're working out, hiking, traveling, fasting, or just trying to feel less like a houseplant that forgot to water itself. My favorite flavor is mango chili, my friends are now converts, and the samples are gone, which means it's time for me to go back to Vermont, and it's time for you to go to drinklmnt.com/Tyler. That's drinklmnt.com/Tyler to receive a free sample pack with any purchase. And trust me on the mango chili. Because with the UGMA or custodial Roth, your kid gets full control at 18 or age of majority. Maybe they make smart decisions, maybe they don't, but either way, it would be out of your hands. With this strategy, you keep the money in your name, you decide what happens to it, and if your kid turns 18 and starts making that series of questionable life decisions, you still have the option to hold on to the money until they, hopefully, mature a bit. Or you never have to tell them you're doing this for them in the first place. The second advantage of this strategy is flexibility. Let's say you contribute $3,000 a year for your kid, but then, life happens. You lose your job, you have a medical emergency, you need the money. If it's in a UGMA or custodial Roth, you can't touch it. It's not your money, even if you technically control it. But if it's in your brokerage account, you can sell it, use it, do whatever you need to do. It's your money until you die. And the third advantage, and again, this is the one most people forget about, is that your kid inherits it 100% tax-free because of the step-up basis. Let's look at the numbers. Let's say you have your first kid at age 30. You decide to invest $3,000 a year in your own taxable brokerage account, invested in VUG, from the day they're born until the day you die. Let's assume you live to 80. That's 50 years of contributions. Total amount you've invested, $150,000. Now, let's assume VUG returns 11% annually over those 50 years. By the time you die at age 80, that account is worth $5.6 million. Your kid inherits it at age 50. Because of the step up in basis, they inherit that entire $5.6 million tax-free. No cap gains taxes, no income taxes, nothing. They can sell it the next day, take the cash, and owe zero taxes on $5.45 million in gains that accumulated over your lifetime. Now, let's say your kid doesn't need the money right away. They inherit it at 50, and they let it keep growing for another 15 years until they're 65. If it continues growing at 11% annually, that $5.6 million turns into $28 million by the time they're 65. Now, the growth after they inherit it, the $22.4 million, is taxable when they sell, but the original $5.6 million they inherited, still tax-free, still reflects their reset cost basis. So even if they owe 20% cap gains on the $22.4 million in post-inheritance gains, that's about $4.5 million in taxes. They're still walking away with $23.5 million net. Not bad for a $150,000 investment. Here's one quick tax implication to consider. While you're alive, because it's in your taxable brokerage account, you do pay taxes on the dividends and realized capital gains. Again, this is why the good news of something like VUG is that it pays very little in dividends, maybe 0.5% a year. So you're not paying much in taxes each year, and as long as you don't sell, you don't owe any taxes on the unrealized capital gains. That's the strategy. So yes, you're paying some taxes along the way, but it's minimal, and it's a small price to pay for the flexibility and control you get in return. The main catch is that you don't get the tax advantages of a Roth IRA. You're paying taxes on dividends and gains along the way, whereas a Roth would give you tax-free growth from day one. But the trade-off is the Roth requires your kid to have earned income, and there are contribution limits. And it's the kid's money at 18 or age of majority. Whereas this strategy has no limits. You could invest $3,000 a year, $10,000 a year, $50,000, whatever. The other catch is estate taxes. If your estate is worth more than $15 million as of 2026, or $30 million for married couples, yes, they'd owe federal estate taxes, and this brokerage account would be part of your taxable estate. But come on, let's be real for a minute. If your estate is worth more than $15 million, odds are you're not one of the people right now listening to a podcast about how to invest $3,000 a year for your kid. So for the other 99.9% of us, estate taxes are not really a concern here, but worth knowing about. This strategy is perfect for parents who, A, don't trust their 18-year-old with a six-figure account, B, want maximum flexibility in case they need the money themselves, or C, want their kid to inherit the money tax-free without the hassle of setting up custodial accounts or worrying about earned income requirements. And honestly, this might be the best option and the easiest and most flexible for a lot of families. Simple, tax efficient, and it does not require your kid to have a W-2 from babysitting. Part 2, a quick side-by-side comparison. Okay, so we've covered 3 different strategies, and I know what you're thinking. Tyler, that's a lot of information. Which one should I actually use? So let's put them side by side and see how they stack up. Here's what we're comparing. For the UGMA, let's say you contribute $3,000 a year from age 5 to 18. That's 14 years, $42,000 total. By age 65, projected to be worth $7.3 million. Taxable gains, but manageable. Kid gets control at 18. For the custodial Roth IRA, let's say you contribute $3,000 a year from age 10 to 18. 9 years, $27,000 total. By age 65, it's worth $3.6 million. 100% tax-free forever. Kid needs earned income. Kid gets control at 18 or age of majority. Your own brokerage, you contribute $3,000 a year from birth until you die at 80. 50 years, $150,000 total. At your death, it's worth $5.6 million. Your kid inherits it tax-free via step-up basis. You keep control the entire time. Now, first thing you'll notice is that the UGMA gets the biggest number by age 65, $7.3 million. That's just because you're starting earlier, age 5 versus age 10, and because the money stays invested in your kid's name for their entire life. You could start earlier with the custodial Roth, but a little harder to justify they're working for you as a toddler. Be real with yourself and the IRS. And here's the thing with the UGMA option. That $7.3 million is taxable. When your kid sells, they will owe long-term capital gains taxes, probably 15 to 20% depending on their income. So after taxes, they're looking at closer to 5.8 to 6.2 million. Compare that to the custodial Roth, which is only 3.6 million, but it's 100% tax-free, no taxes on withdrawals ever. So on a purely after-tax basis, the UGMA still wins, but not by as much as you'd think, and mostly just because of the increased time horizon that I personally chose to use. And then there's your own brokerage account. You contributed way more, $150,000 over 50 years compared to $27K or $42K in the other accounts, but you also kept control the entire time. And your kid inherits $5.6 million completely tax-free. So back to your question, which one is best? Here's how I like to think about it. If your kid is young, like ages 0 to 9, and doesn't have a job and you don't want to pretend they do, the UGMA is probably your best bet. You can start contributing immediately, there are no income requirements, and you'll get the biggest growth over time. Yep, there are some taxes, and yes, your kid gets control at 18, but the numbers are hard to argue with. If your kid does have earned income, primarily let's say for ages 10 and up, the custodial Roth IRA is a clear winner. The tax-free growth is unbeatable, and even though the final number is smaller than the UGMA, it's 100% tax-free, plus you're teaching your kid about earning, saving, and investing, which is also worth something. And if you don't trust your 18-year-old with a 6-figure account, or you want maximum control in case you need the money yourself, just invest in your own brokerage account, you keep the control. But personally, what I would do, I would not just choose one. I would do all three. UGMA from 0 to 10, then switch to a custodial Roth IRA once they start earning income, if they start earning income from 10 to 18, and then keep contributing to your own brokerage account the entire time as a backup. By the time your kid is 65, they'd have money from all three sources, some taxable, some tax-free, some inherited with a step-up basis. But if you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out where to put that first $3,000, I would just open the UGMA, contribute $3,000, invest in the growth fund that works for you, set it and forget it. Whereas if they're 10 or older with the earned income, do the same thing with the custodial Roth IRA and match their earnings up to $7,500 a year. Pick one, do start today, don't overthink it. Because the real mistake is not starting at all when given the opportunity to take advantage of 50 to 60 years of compound growth for your kid. Part 3. Now let's talk about the 529 plan, the account that every financial advisor, every parenting blog, and every well-meaning relative will tell you to open the second your kid is born. And I'll preface this with I'm not saying the 529 plans are bad. They're not. They absolutely have their place like most financial products do. But I do think they're overhyped, and I think a lot of parents open them without fully understanding some of the limitations. So let's talk about what a 529 actually is, when it makes sense, and why I'm not 100% sold on it as the default money account for your kid. A 529 is a tax-advantaged education savings account. You contribute after-tax dollars, money grows tax-free, and as long as you use it for qualified educational expenses, tuition, room and board, books, K-12 tuition, student loans up to $10,000, you never pay taxes on the growth. Note, the growth. Just always remember, it's not some magical tax haven. It's just allowing you to not pay the 15 or 20% cap gains on the growth over a very short investment window. Now, some states also give you a tax deduction on your contributions, which is nice if you live in one of those states. But not all states do this. So don't assume you're getting a tax break just because you opened a 529. And if you don't use the money for education, you pay income taxes plus a 10% penalty on the gains. So there's a real cost to taking the money out for non-education purposes. And yes, we'll get to a few backdoor options soon. So why does everyone recommend this account? Well, the appeal of the 529 is pretty straightforward. Tax-free growth for education expenses, and most parents assume they're doing something noble by contributing to a kid's education in the form of a cheaper college degree. If you contribute $3,000 a year for 18 years and it grows to $100,000, you can use that entire $100,000 for college without paying a dime in taxes. That's a big deal. And for families who are 100% certain their kid's going to college and who live in a state with a generous tax deduction, the 529 can make a lot of sense. But let me give you a couple problems just to consider, and this is why I'm a little skeptical. Problem 1, limited use. The 529 is only useful if your kid uses it for education. And yes, education is broader than it used to be, which is great. You can use it for K through 12 tuition, trade schools, apprenticeships. That's fantastic. But if your kid doesn't go to college, or if they get a full scholarship, if they decide to start a business instead, you are stuck with an account that you can't immediately use without paying taxes and penalties. Now, here are the workarounds. Yes, you can transfer the account to another beneficiary. You could use it for yourself if you decide to go back to school. And as of 2024, you can roll up to $35,000 into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary as long as the 529 has been open for at least 15 years. Now, that last part is a pretty big catch worth considering, because not all of us open the dang account when our children are born, and transferring to another kid, well, that only works if you have another kid. So the 529 is useful, but it's not that flexible unless it's been open since your child was born. Problem number 2, conservative allocations equal lower returns. Here's something most people don't realize about 529 plans. They're designed to get more conservative as your kid gets closer to college age. Most 529 plans use what's called age-based portfolios, similar to target date retirement funds, which means when your kid is born, the money's invested aggressively, let's say 90% stocks, 10% bonds. But as they get older, closer to college age, the portfolio automatically shifts to more bonds and less stocks. By the time your kid is 16 or 17, the portfolio might be 50% bonds, 30% stocks, 20% cash, aka super conservative. And I get why they do this. The idea is obviously to protect your money from a market crash right before your kid starts college. If the market drops 30% the year before they start school, you don't want to be forced to sell at a loss, and there go all of the gains of this account. But here's a problem. Conservative allocations mean lower returns. So if you're sitting there calculating a 10% return over 18 years, just know that's not what you can or should expect from this account unless you're 100% invested in growth funds, which usually aren't accessible via these plan sponsors. Whereas, if you're invested in a growth fund like VUG for 18 years in your own brokerage or a UGMA, and that returns 11% on average per year, your money is going to grow a lot faster than if you're in a 529 that's shifting to 50% bonds by year 15. And you'd potentially be able to make up for the tax savings and then some. But again, this obviously comes with much more risk. But let me show you some quick math. Here are some numbers based on a 529 versus a UGMA. Let's say you contribute $3,000 a year from birth to age 18 in both a 529 and a UGMA. Same contributions, same timeline. For the 529, total contributions, $54,000. We'll assume a 7% average annual return, lower than VUG because of the bond allocation in later years, but even this is quite generous. By age 18, $103,000, get to use it for college, tax-free. UGMA invested in VUG, total contributions, $54,000. Assume 11% average annual return, stays 100% stocks the entire time, again, far more risky. By age 18, projected to have $147,000. Pay our long-term capital gains taxes on the gains, 15 to 20%. After-tax value, $133,000. So even post-taxes, the UGMA invested in VUG is projected to give you $30,000 more than the 529. And as we've already explored, the UGMA can be used for anything. College, a house down payment, starting a business, whatever. The 529 can only be used for education without penalties or rolled over to a Roth up to $35K over the course of 6 to 7 years. So you're getting lower projected returns and less flexibility with the 529. And final problem, but a small one, you're also usually getting higher fund fees associated with these special target date allocations. They're not as cheap as investing in a low-cost growth fund like VUG. Now, does that mean you should never use a 529? No. But it does mean you should think carefully about whether it's the best option for your family and not just assume that it's some magical tax haven where you're going to all of a sudden make your child's college tuition free. Here are the situations where I think a 529 is a good choice. A, you live in a state with a generous tax deduction. Some states like New York, Illinois, Colorado give you a 5 to 7% tax deduction on your contributions. If you're in one of those states or use the 529 from those states, that can be a solid reason. Number 2, you're 100% certain your kid's going to college. If your kid is academically driven, college bound, and you're sure they're going to use the money for education, 529 can be a safer bet. 3, you want forced discipline. This is an interesting nuanced one. One of the benefits of the 529 is that you can't easily rate it for your own uses or for non-educational expenses. So if you know yourself and you're the kind of person who might be tempted to dip into your own kid's college fund to pay for a kitchen renovation or that trip to Maui, the 529 forces you to keep the money earmarked for education. That's worth considering. Now, here are the situations where I think a UGMA or custodial Roth would be a better choice. 1, you're not sure if your kid's going to college. If there's a decent chance your kid will skip college, get a full scholarship, or pursue a trade, UGMA or custodial Roth might give you more flexibility. 2, you just want maximum growth potential and more control over the assets. If you're investing for 18 years and you want highest possible returns, a UGMA or custodial Roth invested in VUG will almost certainly outperform a 529. Well, yes, taking on more risk. Number 3, you value the flexibility, as the UGMA and custodial Roth can be used for anything. The 529 can only be used for education without penalties unless transferred to the Roth. 4, and this is a big one, you don't start investing in the 529 until your kid is 10 or 11. At that point, I truly just don't think it's worth it. You have no idea what's going to happen in the markets over the next 5 to 7 years, and the projected gains do not necessarily outweigh the lack of options and more expensive funds. But as always, run the numbers yourself, be honest about your and your child's timeline, risk profile, needs, wants, etc., and do what works for you. All I ask is you don't just roll with the 529 because that's what you're supposed to do when you adult. All right, let's wrap this episode up because I know that was a lot. The big takeaway from today's episode, 20 years of compounding for your child is irreplaceable. If you start investing for your kid at birth, they have 65 years of compounding. If you wait until they're 20, they now have 45 years. That 20-year head start is the difference between 7.3 million and 1.5 million. You can't make up that time. You can't replicate that growth. The only way to get it is to start early. And I know $3,000 a year sounds like a lot, but it's $250 a month. It's one less dinner out per week. It's skipping the upgraded streaming package. It's money that you most likely would have spent on your kid at some point in their lives anyway. This is just one of the smartest ways to take advantage of the years of growth. I'm also not saying this is easy. I'm saying it's doable for a lot of families. And as always, if you can't do $3,000 a year, take the principles from this episode and do $1,000, do $500, do whatever you can afford, because doing less is a lot more than doing nothing. If you want to hedge your bets, contribute a little bit of money to all three. UGMA from 0 to 10, custodial Roth from 10 to 18, your own brokerage as a backup for stepped up basis later. Finally, a few quick action items for you to consider this week. 1, just go open the account. It takes 10 minutes. Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, open a UGMA, custodial Roth, or just add money to your own brokerage account. Stop overthinking it and just do it. You can open the custodial Roth for your child at birth. You just can't contribute to it until they have earned income. Number 2, set up automatic monthly contributions. $250 a month equals $3,000 a year. Automate it so you don't have to think about it ever again. And with the Roth, just make sure it's earned income. Number 3, invest in a growth fund that works for you. I say growth fund because there is a long time horizon of 50 to 60 years, but invest in what works for you and your family. Finally, number 4, never touch it. This is the hardest part. Don't sell when the market drops. Don't panic when it's down, as that money is not intended for any time in the near future. That's it. 4 steps: open the account, automate contributions, invest in growth, and leave it alone. Eerily similar to what we talk about doing with our own accounts. Do that, and your kid will have millions of dollars by the time they retire. Not because you paid for everything, but because you gave them 20 extra years of compounding that they can never get back. And ultimately, this isn't about making your kid rich. It's just about giving them options. And that's what all of this is really about. Not the number in the account, but the financial freedom that the number represents. Thanks for listening. And if this episode helped you, if it gave you even a little clarity on how you could actually help your kid financially, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as it helps other parents find the show. And honestly, it helps me keep making these episodes. Hope this gives you something to think about throughout the week ahead. Thanks for tuning in to your Money Guide on the Side. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit my website at tylergardner.com for even more helpful resources and insights. And if you are interested in receiving some quick and actionable guidance each week, don't forget to sign up for my weekly newsletter, where each Sunday I share 3 actionable financial ideas to help you take control of your money and investments. You can find the sign-up link on my website, tylergardner.com, or on any of my socials at socialcapofficial. Until next time, I'm Tyler Gardner, your money guide on the side, and I truly hope this episode got you one step closer to where you need to be.